You're listening to Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran. Out of the Box is sponsored by hugmetees.com. Spread love, give a hug, hugmetees.com. Guys, we are now on SoundCloud. Go on soundcloud.com/Out of the Box Podcast and click on the follow button. I love all of the iTunes people. I love the Stitcher people. But if you have a SoundCloud account, you can go on SoundCloud and click unfollow just to support me. Even if you don't listen to the podcast on SoundCloud, go on SoundCloud and click unfollow. It helps. And as always, we love positive comments on iTunes. And I have a couple new positive comments, so I want to give a shout out to those people. If you're sending me a positive email, I love the positive emails, but they don't do anything except for stroke my ego. So go on iTunes.com/Out of the Box Podcast and leave a positive comment there. That helps out the podcast because it brings up our numbers and helps other people find us. So that makes me very happy. I am here today with magician Joel Ward. Joel, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm holding Joel hostage in my house right now. I locked all the doors and closed the windows.
It's a magic trick.
It's a magic trick. We have to escape.
Good luck, Houdini. Yeah.
So I originally met Joel performing at the Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa Beach. And I don't know much about the magic world, but I'm really interested. I actually wanted to be a magician when I was little, but I kind of got scared. I didn't get that much into it. So is the comedy world similar to the magic world similar to the comedy world, or is it like a totally different beast?
Well, they are kind of similar in a sense where it's kind of like a lonesome art form. Like it's usually a one magician, traveling and doing his show, and so in a sense of comedy, one person being on stage, it's very similar.
And I think stand-up is very controlled, even though people think it's like off the cuff, and magic is like that, right?
Yeah, I would say magic's even more so like that than stand-up. I mean, I do a lot of improv in my shows, but I think a lot of magicians have like either their tricks down or their script down. But when I go do a show, it's like I usually know which my set list is going to be, and music,
so it's very similar.
Yeah, so music is like it's already set, and it's really hard for me to kind of change things around last minute.
You can't be like, I'm going to do this instead, right? And
yeah,
your
exactly.
assistant's like, what are we doing?
Right. So it kind of has to be kind of set from the beginning of the show.
Even if you're doing not a large show, if you're doing sleight of hand stuff, or
that's a lot more. That's
improv,
a lot.
Right?
Yeah, that's all improv. So when I'm doing close up magic, I can approach like a group of people and just do whatever I feel is appropriate for the moment. So that's kind of cool. I actually think that's probably the best type of magic. Is that close
up? Is it harder?
Well, it is. Well, it's harder, but it's more fun, and I think people like it more. When magic happens in front of your hands or like inches away
close,
from your
right?
eyes,
You're like, wait a minute.
It's like, whoa, how did that happen? I think it's more impactful and it's stronger. The further away you get, and you're like, oh, it's just bubble gum, or there's a string, So I think people, I think it's best when it's performed up close.
And how did you get into magic? It just seems like, first of all, you're a professional comedian, which is awesome. And I got to give you props for that, because anyone who followed their dream all the way through is like just amazing, because a lot of people take it as, it's just a hobby, or it's not something to be taken seriously, just like comedy.
Right.
But how did you get into it?
Well, I love the question of, you're doing a show for a bunch of lawyers, and they're like, oh, so like, what do you do during the day? Like, what do you really do? They're like, no, that's great. Like, that's just your nighttime gig, right? I'm like, no, this is my full-time gig. So I saw a magician when I was 6. I grew up in San Diego in a little North County suburb called Cardiff by the Sea. And
that sounds magical,
isn't it? I live in Cardiff by the Sea, 92007 in California.
I feel like a magician would come from there,
right? Or a surfer, right? I mean, we have like the Rob Machados of the surf world, or like the Tony Hawks of the skate world. They're all from like the North County, San Diego area. But of course, Cardiff by the Sea, gotta have a magician too, right? So I saw a magician. I really wasn't into magic. I was 6 years old. I was in first grade at Cardiff Elementary School. This magician was doing a school assembly for the entire school, and I was sitting in the back. I was wearing a black hat. I had my arms crossed. I didn't like this guy.
At 6?
At 6, I was like, I had an older brother.
You were like emo already back then.
Yeah, I was like, my older brother, he was like cooler. So I was like, dude, this guy's stupid. Like,
were you like the 6-year-old Fonz? Let's be real.
I don't know what that is.
The Fonz from Happy Days.
No, that's a little.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I just don't know.
We're like the same age. Are you kidding me, Joel?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I'm just...
The fonts, like the black leather jacket with the collar up, the motorcycle, kind of like too cool for school.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I got out there. But I don't know what I was. I think I was just, young and kind of shy, actually. And I saw this magician was there, and he picked me for a trick, and I didn't want to assist him at all. And aren't
magicians supposed to pick like the ready and willing person?
Yeah, but he chose the guy with the hat with his arms crossed who was like, I don't like this guy at all. And he pulled me up on stage and he picked me for a trick called the rings, the linking rings. Where It's like the two rings and they link together.
I do know that trick.
So he gave me two of them that were not linked together. He placed them in my hands. He's like, on the count of 3, you're going to drop one of the rings. They're going to link together. The whole school's going to applaud, and they're going to think you're a magician. I was like, whatever. Like, this set me up for a disaster. He's going to make fun of me. And boom, on the count of 3, bam, the rings linked together. The whole school applauded. He's like, you're a magician. I believed him. I went home. I told my mom that I got to help the musician because I didn't know how to say magician. I was missing like a couple front teeth. I was like, I got to help the musician. She's like, oh, cool. What music or what instrument did you play? I was like, oh, the rings. And she's like, oh, magic. So I was like super stoked on that. And my dad got me a magic set for Christmas. But he got this idea that if I was going to open up the magic set, I was going to learn how to do all the tricks as like a puzzle and then throw it in the closet and move on to the next hobby. So he took the magic set back and bought me a book on sleight of hand. And that Christmas, we read the book together and we learned how to make a coin disappear. And I think it was kind of like that fundamental like idea of, well, I'm learning this as like kind of like you would learn like an instrument, or it's not just like a puzzle. It's not just like a bunch of props that you figure things out, and then because like once a puzzle's done, you kind of move on to the next puzzle.
Yeah.
So kind of learning it as like with sleight of hand was kind of like learning an art. And
so can you pickheaded people?
Yeah. Watches, right? Where do you think I got this guy? Right? This is totally.
He's wearing a very nice watch for those of you who are listening and can't see.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that
and there's an art to it. It's a craft, right?
Yeah, so it's totally a craft.
Do you feel that anyone? So the difference between an art and a craft is that a craft is something you can work on and get better.
That's right.
Right. It's just like stand up. A lot of people don't understand. They think, oh, you're just naturally funny. No, you can work on jokes and work on things and make them better.
Exactly.
So if anyone works hard at it, do you think they can become a good magician?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are good technical magicians, and then there's good performers
that put on a really good show, right?
And then there's sometimes good magicians and good performers come together and create a good magician. So I think it's a combination of both. You could be the best technician, but the most boring,
awkward magician, right?
And there's a lot of those. And then you could be like the greatest performer, but not do that great of magic. And still be very successful. And yeah, so there's like there's both worlds, and I try to balance both of them as much as I can. But
do you come up with any of your own tricks or magic illusions, or
yeah, of course. No, totally. I love that.
I don't know anything about the magic world.
Comedians are always like, I think there's always this thing between like comedians and magicians is like kind of. I think comics don't really like magicians, or even magicians. Prop comics.
I love magicians.
Or even musical.
I agree with you completely. Mm-hmm. I love good magicians. So I think a lot of comics have that stereotype of kind of the cheesy,
right.
Magician. And I've seen that, and I wanted to ask you about that because I was performing at the John Lovitz Club, and there was a magician as the headliner, and he wasn't a very good magician. And obviously with comedy and magic, there's a lot of timing involved, and his timing was a little off, and it was just really awkward. And he was like, the people that he was bringing up for the tricks weren't really into them, and it was kind of like this. I think that's kind of what comics imagine, or they kind of think of something very Carrot Top-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's kind of an insult to comedy.
Right.
And so I know what you're talking about. I've met comedians like that.
Right.
But have you ever had a trick just go wrong in the middle of it and had to scramble to...
Oh my gosh. Have I? I think I'm like the king of magic gone wrong. I bet I could do a whole 60-minute show of magic gone wrong, like stories
let's hear about,
or
because
reenactments.
These are learning experiences, right?
Yeah, totally.
And you're learning and growing as a magician.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so I think as far back as I can remember, like my first show... I started doing birthday parties as a kid when I was 10 years old, so I billed myself as the kid show magician. and my parents loaned me $75 for a tuxedo, and I cut the sleeves off and like the pants into shorts, and I was like wearing like a short tux, in San Diego with like flip flops, like going to birthday parties and doing these kid shows. Well, one trick involved like putting a red like Chuck E. Cheese ball into like a little box, and you open up the sides of like the doors and you show that it's gone. Well, if you open it the wrong way, there's like a little compartment where the ball goes on the back of the door.
Where the ball is,
so
right?
I showed everyone where the ball was. So that was like the very first like, oh, if I reveal a trick,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Like people are not going to. There's nothing good about it. So that was like my first like memory of it. But over the years, oh my gosh, there's a trick where a magician takes like a signed $100 bill, right? So you take like a bill. It doesn't have to be 100, but if someone signs a $100 bill, in my show, I'll fold it up and I'll light it on fire and it disappears. And then I take an orange and then I cut it open, and inside the orange is the signed $100 bill.
Okay.
Classic trick. Well, one day I was doing this at a country club in San Diego, and I had a really sharp knife, and it was just like one of those like little pocket knives, like serrated, like
for cutting the orange, right?
For cutting the orange, right? But I was like, instead of just like taking like a butter knife, which I should have used,
I was like, scared.
I'm gonna use this like cool like spider like I can snap it open.
I'm so scared. I'm
and
so
like
scared.
look
okay.
cool. So I like slice it open, and as I do it, I slice.
Oh my gosh.
My hand like right by my thumb, the crotch of my thumb, all the way down.
There's like blood all over the 100.
Oh my god! It almost hit an artery. There was so much blood. It was just gushing out, and
they're like, "Is this part of the trick?"
And it was like the citrus was hitting it, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna die!" Like, so I wrap up the wound with a banana or a bandana. I'm sorry, a bandana
with the $100 bill. You're like, "Here's your $100 bill back."
So I clean off the 100, I give it back, but that's not the end of the show,
oh
right?
My gosh.
This is like the second to last trick of the show. So I have to close the trick with Harry Houdini's Metamorphosis illusion, which is like a crate where I get locked inside. I get chained. I go into.
First of all, you didn't stop the show. You're like bleeding to death.
I'm bleeding, like hurting. So I get into this little crate. My assistant locks it. She stands on top. She holds up a curtain, and we're supposed to switch places. Well, that's what is supposed to happen.
Don't tell me your thumb fell off.
So as soon as I stand up, because I've lost like so much blood, I trip and I knock my assistant down, and she falls into the box, sprains her ankle. She's crying.
Oh my god.
The curtain comes down, reveals the trick. There's like a trap door open. My butt's in it, and I'm sitting like Pooh Bear on top of this crate, bleeding. She's crying, and I'm like, get up. We have to take a bow. And she's like, no, like I don't want to take a bow. And then we it was terrible.
My gosh.
And then of course the client's like wanting to do pictures after the show.
They were still like happy with it?
We were just like, I was just like white face, like pale. So that was like
your blood sugar's crashing and you're like painting at the ground.
So that's one story. I mean, there's multiple, but a lot of cutting. Yeah, there's been a lot of like cutting.
Okay, you're only using butter knives from now on.
Yeah.
What? So I don't think I've ever laughed as hard on the podcast, and obviously pain plus time equals comedy, and I have no issue laughing at your pain. I'm just imagining you. Like,
oh my gosh, I was doing a show for Emma Stone's birthday party at her house, and it was a Clue themed birthday party. And I had to reveal all the murder weapons to figure out who the murder was. So my show, the storyline was eliminating the murder weapons. So it was like piece of rope, and then I would do a rope trick, and then I pulled out a knife, and then I was going to do a knife trick.
No more knives, Joel.
So the trick was this huge butcher knife, and I was supposed to like stab it into my arm.
Oh my gosh.
And it was supposed to like dig deep into my arm. Like the illusion looked really good in rehearsal. And then I would pull it out, and then I would be fine and be like, and it can't be the knife.
Did someone switch knives?
No, they didn't switch knives, but the edge of the gimmick was like, there was like, it wasn't fully like rounded, or it wasn't smooth, and it cut me. And all of these top actors were like, oh my god, are you okay? I'm like, no, it couldn't be the knife because I'm fine. They're like, no, you're bleeding. And the same thing happened. I cut myself, so I like quickly roll my shirt down, blood's like seeping through, and they're like just looking like, wow, that's a good looking trick, Like, doesn't it look like he's bleeding? Oh my God.
Stop.
It's
No
bad.
more stories.
Okay, no more stories. You asked.
Okay. I can't even gather my thoughts. I'm just imagining you just cutting yourself. I guess I have this comedic thought of the blood like squirting out of your arm, and you're just like, everything's fine, guys. It's part of the trick.
I know, seriously. I think that would make for a better show if I could actually recreate that every
if you
night.
could actually recreate the fake blood.
Yeah.
So how are all these learning experiences like? I'm trying to like make
Pull
it something
this together.
Pull
Yeah.
this together. Because okay, the way that I think comedy is very positive, even though I think that some people don't take it this way, is that you fail instantly.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this experience of, because most people, the majority of people are scared to death of failure. And that's why a lot of people stay in their shell and stay in their box, because they just think, well, if I fail, I'm going to be humiliated. I'm going to die. All these horrible things are happening. And of course, it's just the psychological BS that your ego tells you, because, you know, obviously, even though you failed and literally injured yourself, you're fine, right?
Right, of course.
And so with comedy, when you do a joke and it bombs and everyone, you know, and you move on to the next joke and you're like, okay, I'm moving on. So it's this idea of you're moving forward no matter what. And it sounds like you have had a lot of these learning experience to know that, you know, you can move forward. And did you ever have an experience where you were just like, okay, that's it. I'm quitting magic. I'm just humiliated. Do you feel that each stepping stone has kind of pushed you forward into like, hey, this is just part of the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had days or months, you know, of I can't do this, or if I don't reach this goal by this date, I'm
or
gonna
finding
quit.
work even, right?
Yeah, or
hard.
even finding gigs, yeah, and just like struggling financially. You know, I've been through all of that, and I think each like roadblock is a stepping stone, and if you can get through that, you know. I think this idea of fear of holding us back is, I mean, it's huge. It
an
keeps us
illusion,
from,
actually.
It is
the true illusion,
it's
right?
like the real illusion that
because it's not real.
It's not real, but it's there, and it's this idea that, you know, we don't want to humiliate ourselves, or I don't think we really reach our full potential a lot of the time because we're just scared to, you know. It's like I'll read a great self-help book and I'll be like, oh my God, and then I don't want to finish it because I don't want to, you know, sometimes I'm like scared to finish it because I'm like, oh, now I have the information and the tools that I need
and I have to
approach
use it,
those,
right?
and I have to use it, right? So I think there's this idea that we sometimes don't want to excel, and it's our own fault, you know.
It is our own fault. It happens all the time, and I mean, it just happened to me, and I'm sure you've had this experience before. You know, I have been procrastinating on my YouTube channel for like a year and a half, and finally, I was just cast in a movie, and the director said, "Well, we need your acting reel to present to producers, or you can't be in this movie." And I've been procrastinating on this acting reel for literally a year and a half, 2 years. And when he said, "If you don't get this acting reel to me, you're not going to be able to be in this movie," I did it in like an hour.
I know. Isn't it crazy? All these things. I did that with my website, you know, like I just recreated a website, and for 10 years I was procrastinating doing a new website because I was like, oh my God, it's this huge task. And I busted it out in a week.
Yeah,
you know?
It's not
it
a
was
huge task
so
at all.
easy.
And then, but then once you recognize it, the next time it almost becomes harder to self-sabotage, which is what we were doing by making these overwhelming fears, because you're like, oh, well, it didn't take that long.
Right.
The only thing holding me back for that year and a half was all my stories. I would sit down to do my reel, and then for some reason I would have some excuse like, oh, I got to work on this. Oh, I got to do this. This is more important. Oh, it's going to take so much time. Let me just think about it more. And then we actually create these artificial roadblocks.
Totally. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I just got done reading Chris Hardwick's his book, The Nerdist Way.
The Nerdist.
Have you read that?
I haven't.
It's fantastic. It's really good. I love it. And it's like, it's a lot of things that are like very simple things, but we forget about them, and just implementing them is like fantastic, you know? And I don't know, it's a really like fun, easy read, positive book. And I don't know, it's fantastic. I'd recommend it to everyone. But
okay, guys, look it up and read it.
Yeah, do it. But yeah, I think most of these things that I think are like too overwhelming, or this fear of, oh, I can't ever get that done. Once you do it, it's like, it's so easy, and then it just leads to like the next thing. And I don't know, I find that practicing that idea of doing those things that are fearful to you every day, like just trying to do something out of your comfort zone. And it sounds cliche and it sounds corny, but it's like, for me, it's like, it's improv classes, you know. Improv like terrifies me, but going and taking those classes, like, I'm like, oh, okay, I got through it. Even if it was like a rough day and I wasn't feeling it, or I wasn't, you know, in the moment, I was in my head, you know, just doing that, it's like, I'll get through that, and it'll, I don't know, make me feel like I can do anything. But I think practicing that and sort of getting on that sort of cycle of doing those things that make you feel uncomfortable is really, really positive.
Being uncomfortable is a very, very good thing, because it just means that you're up against something that you feel you can't handle.
Yeah.
And so breaking through that is like a huge empowering moment. So
Totally.
A lot of people are afraid of being uncomfortable, and what I say is that you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, you know, when you're uncomfortable, all that means is you're at the edge of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So when you keep pushing through it, you make your comfort zone bigger until you can accomplish anything.
Totally.
And I want to say now, you're not just a magician, because as an independent performer, you're actually a small business owner, and your business is you.
Yeah.
Right? So what are some things that keep you motivated to keep your business running?
Well, I mean, for the longest time, it was, you know, just being able to sustain myself as a magician. Like, just,
that's like huge,
right? Just be like, oh, I can pay my bills and I can just do magic. Like, I've never had another job. So for the longest time, it was just that, you know, it was just getting to that level. And lately, I've been like, okay, I know I want to expand, or I want to do more. So it's kind of coming up with goals and really just kind of going after them. It's something that I've always kind of like done like a few goals here and there, but I've never really like laid out like a business plan, or like be like, okay, this is the goal and this is the roadmap how to get there. And it's really just thinking about it, and it's really just like putting like it on paper and like seeing it and just
going towards
chipping
it,
away.
right?
Yeah, chipping it. But I think not having a goal, just kind of living every day of like, oh, maybe I'll get a gig, or I'll see what emails come in, or you know, I'll see what's, you know, stuff coming to you, you know, and it's just everyone out there is wanting to either pull you into their world, but for you to create your own, you kind of have to, you know, come up with your own goals. And
you do. And I think a lot of people do that. They just kind of float along on the river and think, well, you know, they'll have, like you said, one or two goals here and there, but there's not a vision.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to have a vision, you know, whether you're in entertainment or you're just, you know, if you have a business, if you have a financial goal, to have that vision for yourself, because otherwise you're just floating around. I know my husband and I have certain financial goals, and sometimes he'll feel like we're just floating around, and I'll say, okay, well, remember we have this, and this goal. And he'll say, oh yeah, he goes, I'll forget about it.
Yeah.
And then just reminding him of our vision, it'll motivate him and give him purpose to be back on track, instead of thinking, totally, oh, I'm just going to work for nothing.
Right. For sure. Yeah. I love that. You know, yeah, it's been like, this year's been fantastic.
You've had a really great year.
Yeah, it's been like really good. I've been able to just have a lot of work and like a lot of financial like goals of like paying off past debts and you know, planning for the future too. So it feels good. You know, I think like when you get on that sort of like that ball, you know, of like sort of,
it starts going forward.
Yeah,
right?
It's kind of addictive too, and it's just like, you know, I kind of think, yeah, I don't know, that synergy just kind of stays.
So
together.
we talked a little bit about your, like, there's always kind of been this thing with comedy and magicians, and you said that they kind of view it in a negative way. If you felt that energy, what I know what you're talking about, but what does that mean? Like, what do you feel? Have you ever had a comedian say something to you? Like, do you feel that?
I always get. I mean, at a sense, I've performed at quite a few comedy clubs, but I mean, my favorite, of course, is the Comedy Magic Club, because there's magic in the name of the comedy club, right? So it's like, even though comedy's first, right? There's, hey, we're still here for a reason. So it's kind of fun. I mean, the first thing I'll do is when I get backstage is I'll let the other comics know that I'm a magician, and that always changes the whole energy backstage. Because if I'm just another comic, they're like, "Whoa, who's this guy?" You know, they're kind of. It's weird, right? They're so weird.
Did I do that to you? I don't think so.
I don't think you did. You were cool. You're an exception to the rule. But
I was scared you were going to kill those doves.
Oh man! But I only killed a few. So
the pigeons, I mean,
they're doves.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Gosh, right?
I couldn't remember. I just was petrified because I had just seen a magic movie, The Illusionist or something, I can't remember, and he kills the birds.
Prestige, yeah.
The Prestige or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, is there a chapter for the birds, or do they kill them? And in the film, the birds die.
Right.
And so I was like, please don't kill the birds, please.
No, my oldest bird is actually 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't kill my doves. Yeah, I do a lot of shows a year. That would be a very expensive trick to do.
I was petrified. So I wasn't looking down on you when you said you were a magician or having weird energy or whatever. I was just like, please don't kill the birds.
Right. No. And I think a lot of people, I think because of that movie and, that's changed the game. Using animals in magic is very tough these days. I mean, it's hard. Most magicians have phased out like tigers and all of that. Like it's really hard. Like even just working with birds or doves. There's always that PETA activist who's like, oh, I don't know.
You're like, they're very well taken care of.
Yeah, seriously. They have an aviary in the backyard. My oldest bird is 20. Get over it.
So you tell people, you say, hey, I'm a magician.
So like that kind of helps, right? Because then it's like, oh, he practices a different craft than I do, But then I think it's also, once they see if you're a good magician or versus a bad, I don't know. Like, it kind of depends. They'll either be nicer after they see your set.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's kind of my case with magicians. But I understand from the comics point of view. It's like they can go up there with nothing, right? Just them and a microphone and an audience. And that's a very vulnerable situation to be in. Magicians can hide behind their props and their tricks, and it's two different crafts. But I think there's energy flowing in between both of them. Well, more so as like comedy into the magic. But yeah, I don't know. It's fun. I love it.
Have you ever watched another magician and been able to see like all of his illusions or known them?
Most of the time.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's hard for me to watch
because your eye is trained, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of this weird thinking. Like from a young age, I've kind of figured things out, right? So as a magician, we sort of dissect things and figure out a solution to the answer. So I was always trained from my early mentors was come up with the trick first, whatever the trick is, right? Like it could be the craziest trick. It'd be like the refrigerator levitates up in the air, changes colors, spins 3 times, and then lands back on stage, and then reverse engineer and figure out a method to do it. So then we come up with all the different methods or tools that we already have as a magician, and then we'll figure out ways to do it. And if we can't, we'll figure out a new engineering way to do it. So I think that sort of dissecting of magic kind of goes into a lot of aspects of magicians' lives. You'll notice a lot of magicians are skeptics, a lot of magicians are atheists, and I think it's because of that idea of that they're figuring out what the puzzle is or how something works.
So even though you guys are creating this magic and these illusions, you're saying that a lot of magicians don't believe in magic and illusions.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know one who does. I mean, I think
you guys are tricking people, so you think there's always a trick.
Yeah, exactly. I don't. Yeah, I hope there's not a magician out there who's like, I'm a real wizard. So you
guys are technically engineers. Engineer means entertainer.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. In a sense, yeah. I mean, there's definitely an engineering aspect of the behind the scenes of the magic and stuff.
So are magic shows just ruined for you? Like you can't, or can you switch back into enjoyment mode?
Well, I look at magic from a performance point of view. If I'm entertained by it, then it's great. Rarely does a trick fool me. When it does, it's awesome. It brings me back to when I was 6 years old and seeing a trick for the very first time. And it happens from time to time. I'll go to the Magic Castle in Hollywood and I'll check out new performers that are coming into town. And sometimes they'll blow my mind, and that's great. That's fantastic. I love it when that happens. I want that to be the case more and more and more. But most of the time I'll watch a show and I'll know how the trick is done, but I'll either be, enjoying it because of the, that was a great premise on that trick. Like I love how they, combined these two effects and created this, this new hybrid of the two. So that's kind of what I enjoy more, presentation and showmanship and the performance side of things.
What is the most outrageous trick you've ever seen? And is there any trick that you can't figure out to this day?
Oh, man. Wow. I mean, David Copperfield still does some really cool tricks. I mean, he's still like, he's the king still, you know,
Okay.
Like he's in Vegas, like he's been the king ever since I was born. And he's still like
The king.
the man, you know, David Copperfield, you know, David friggin' Copperfield. So I think the last time I saw his show, there was a bunch of moments that I was like, what? How did he do that? There's one trick where he has this huge sheet of metal and he like turns it up and people are banging on it. It's just metal, right? And then he's underneath it and he suspends like some like stretchy like white like spandex fabric over the top, and then he goes through the metal and you see him like coming up through the top, and I can't figure it out. It was great. It was awesome. I was like, I don't know how he just did that.
So is there is there a magic college? I know there's like a mime college and other, I mean, did you just figure it out on your own? Is it like stand up where it's like the School of Hard Knocks?
Well, there's Hogwarts, and yeah, but besides that, no, there's not really. I mean, there are magic. Okay, so it's kind of like a hidden like art form.
Okay.
So the way it kind of works is you are self-taught, right? So you read books on your own, you learn tricks,
and you create your own, right?
Yeah, well, you'll like learn a few things, but then you'll prove yourself to another magician and be like, look, I'm serious about this. Like, I've been studying for years. Like, this is what I can do. And if that magician thinks that you're up to par or wants to take you under their wing, then they will. So
is this for real?
No, this is for real.
Okay. So this sounds like so.
So there's a lot of like these
apprenticeship, right?
Yeah, mentorship, apprenticeship like style things, and that's kind of the way magic is passed from magician to magician. I think over the years, there's a lot more like classes or workshops or weekend like magic camps that kids can go to. But for the most part, it's one-on-one mentorship. So I've had a lot of mentors over the years of different magicians that specialize in certain tricks. Like I had one mentor who specialized just in dove tricks, like magic with birds. So that was like his life. He was like super. How
did you find him?
And I found him at a magic camp. Actually, I was like the cool kid who would go to magic camp for a week in the summer up in the mountains.
So there is magic school.
So there was kind of, yeah. So and then there was other mentors that I met along the way. There's a whole competition circuit. Underground competition circuit, like a nationwide one and then a worldwide one. So I started competing in magic contests when I was a teen and going all over the country and doing all these contests and stuff. So it's kind of this like underground brotherhood, and there's a lot of magicians and they're very open and friendly, and I would say that's how it would be a little bit different than the comedy world, because I don't know what it's like in comedy, but and with magicians, I could be like, hey, I'm in Columbus. Like, what magicians are in Columbus? And those magicians will pick you up at the airport and like drive you like around and take you to get good food. And, so it's like kind of like a very...
I feel like magic world seems a lot more supportive than comedy. I found that about the podcasting world. The podcasting world is like super different than stand-up, and I love it. It's so positive and supportive, and podcasters like kind of have each other's back.
Totally.
Comedy's a bit cutthroat. I don't like that part of it.
Yeah.
Is that people are very competitive and cutthroat, and I'm just not that way. Maybe that's why I haven't been as successful as I want to do in comedy. But I just think it's a little bit more cutthroat. I want to talk about your assistants.
Okay.
Because I always wondered, the magician gets all the glory, but the assistant is a big part of the show, right?
Oh my gosh, they do so much.
They do so much, right?
So much, if not everything. I mean, it just depends on the trick, but yeah, assistants are so important. I mean,
it's not just a pretty face.
It's not just a pretty face, no. I mean, a good assistant is wonderful on stage, is someone who can be very graceful, a dancer-like
person, right?
Person, but who can also do the trick right, be able to break down the tricks, set up the tricks, set up really weird things. Like, I need you to put 3 pieces of confetti, fold it up into this silk handkerchief, and wrap this match with a piece of gaffer's tape exactly, precise, and put it in the rubber band, and, and set that, and make sure the birds get out of the cage in time before they die,
Oh my God.
I'm kidding. But it's a very important job. And I've had a lot of assistants over the years, and I've had really bad assistants. I've had really terrific assistants, and it's a very fascinating world because it is the magician taking the glory, but it's the assistant who does a lot. A
lot, right? Is there an assistants union or an assistants world of magic?
There's not really, but I would say in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, there's a lot more because probably there's just a lot more work opportunities for magicians' assistants, but gosh, I mean, there are. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Most magicians will date their assistants.
I was about to ask you, actually. I was going to do the Us Weekly. I didn't want to do the Us Weekly people question, but...
Yeah, but so that's usually when it goes downhill, right? So I've dated a lot of my assistants.
You haven't?
I have.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, and I made that mistake up until the last 5 years of my life.
I thought you were going to say last 5 assistants. I was like, whoa.
No, so I would
Is it just because you guys are traveling and working together so much? And usually they're beautiful.
And magicians are awkward, and it's we're kind of we're kind of weird people anyway. So it's we get to hang out with the sexy girl, and it's usually if we know we can cross that line, we will, and we'll be like, oh, look, we got the chick, So I don't know, and yeah, so it's you travel, and it's cheaper to get 1 hotel room, instead of 2. Or if you're on a cruise ship, they'll only give you 1 room. Be sorry, no, this is the act. And if the assistant is part of the act, then it's 1 bed on a cruise ship. So I don't know. Over the years, yeah, I've definitely separated the 2.
Okay.
Which has been fantastic.
Okay.
And the assistants that I have now are the best I've ever had. They're fantastic. They show up, they're punctual. They're oh, this is a business. This guy's legit. He pays me. He doesn't try to sleep with me, So I think it's good. I think it's
So assistants starting out should be wary.
Well, I think so. Yeah, totally. Magicians, yeah, there's some creepy dudes out there. And I think, yeah, they can have some weird, ideas in their head. So be careful, girls.
Be careful if he says it's a trick and you're being tied up and you'll be released later.
Right. Wait, who's the trick? Yeah. What's the trick? Yeah, seriously. 50 Shades of Magic. Oh, man. So, yeah, I would say good assistants are out there. I find the best ones are ones that don't really have any previous magic background. And if you could try to get someone new, fresh, someone from the dancing world, or who's just really comes with a clean idea of what magic is, because a lot of magic that uses assistants are stage illusions, and that's kind of very old school magic anyway, because a lot of it is just cheesy tricks that have been redone over the last 100 years. So there are some new cool illusions out there, but most of them are pretty lame in my opinion.
Is that a thing, kind of in stand-up when a comic is doing an old done premise, they call it hack? Is that a thing in magic where
totally.
That's a horrible hack trick or whatever?
Yeah, completely. Yeah? Oh, for sure. Yeah. Unless they can do that trick really well and be oh, that's the best version of the old, Subtrunk or Metamorphosis.
Is it hard to be original in magic? Or more original?
I think so. I mean, that's what I strive for now. I didn't really implement comedy into magic until, 2001. Mm-hmm. Maybe no, maybe even late. No, later in the last 5 years or so. I got a gig. I was hired to tour with Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus. And I went on a 3-month tour with them all over the East Coast and Puerto Rico. And I was doing big illusions. And I was the serious magician. I was I'm going to have a show in Vegas one day, and I was really going down that road, and it's my idea as a kid was like the whole spectacle show. It was like confetti and friggin' fire and beautiful girls and big boxes
and tigers.
And tigers. Like that was the goal. And then I started doing that kind of style magic, and I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't like any of this. And then I would notice like the guys would get booked as like the MC, and they would get paid the same, and they wouldn't have to bring any of that stuff. And I was like, whoa, like this guy, like he just showed up 5 minutes before the show, and he left, and I'm
still cleaning up and setting
4
up.
hours after the show. So this circus really just threw me for a loop. They put me in these funny costumes, and they had me going out with like clowns doing pre-shows, and it really took me out of my comfort zone. And it made me realize that, oh, okay, this is not what I'm digging. Like I'm digging.
It threw you
the
for a
comedy
loop,
side.
as in they kind of were putting you on the track that you thought you wanted, but it wasn't what you wanted.
Yeah, well, I think they were putting me into situations that made me feel uncomfortable, like interacting with students or with clowns and students. Interacting with students. What? Creepy magic show. Yeah.
What kind of magic show is this?
So I realized after I did this 3-month tour, I ended up quitting, and I was like, oh, comedy and magic. I want a fusion of that. So I've been like slowly kind of going more down that road.
So you've been writing more jokes.
Yeah, just kind of writing more jokes and kind of like coming up with premises that are more fun, that are more me, like trying to create tricks that...
Instead of like the dramatic, serious magician, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, like, okay, what do I do outside of magic that I can bring into magic to keep it fresh, Like
and bring some joy.
Yeah, exactly. So those are kind of fun. So it's like, little things like I surf, so I'm trying to implement like surf and magic. I do yoga, so like yoga and magic, tennis and magic, like kind of just taking things from my outside world and bringing them in and incorporating like new tricks that hopefully people haven't seen before. So
that's
I don't know. So it's kind of fun. Yeah. So I'm kind of...
How do you incorporate yoga and magic?
Well, I'm working on like a yoga trick right now. It's like, it's because yoga is all about breathing and it's all mind, right? So there's a lot of tricks that are mind reading, mind control over stuff. So I'm working on like a yoga mat trick with some mind reading stuff. So it's kind of fun. I don't know. Okay,
I have one question, and I don't know. So first of all, is the revealing a trick like the magician's taboo, or is it like if someone says, "How do you do this trick?" Yeah, it kind of is.
It still is like the number one rule in magic.
So there's rules. Is it like Fight Club?
Yeah, right. First rule of magic: don't talk about magic. Right. Second rule of So there are rules. You're supposed to like not reveal your tricks. That's number one, because if the audience knows, then what are you doing up there?
But what about revealing other people's tricks?
Well, that's kind of where the ethical line is drawn.
Okay.
There's been magicians over the years like Penn and Teller, who I highly admire, who are probably my favorite magicians working today, who reveal tricks, and they'll do it on TV, but they do it in such an artistic way where you are seeing how the trick is done. Like, for example, the old classic cups and balls trick?
Yes.
Right, where there's like a cup and a ball, and they move it around, and the ball's jumping from cup to cup. Well, they do it with clear cups, and you see how the trick is happening, but it's more spectacular knowing how it works. So they do things like that, where they'll, put the eyes into the reveal, but it's makes
still
it
amazing,
way more
right?
entertaining, and it's fantastic. So yeah, there is definitely that line. I think with YouTube and the internet today, it's really easy for people to just Google a trick.
I've Googled tricks before.
And you can totally do that. You can be like, oh, how did the magician turn that card upside down in that pack? And they'll enough research, they'll find it, And YouTube, there's kids all over the world who are like revealing tricks online because they're not magicians, they're just hobbyists, and they're like, oh, I figured this out, this is how it works, and sharing it with the world. So it's a lot easier, I think, to do that these days, and that's why I think it's really important for magicians to come up with original tricks. So
okay, I have like 5,000 more questions, but we got to wrap up in like 15 minutes. Okay, I don't know if you can reveal this. It's okay if the answer is no. I don't know if you remember those magic shows that used to come on like 10, 15 years ago, and like NBC, they would do some magic show on NBC or CBS or whatever. They did a trick where they put cards up against, they're kind of digital cards up against a TV, and you pick one and they eliminate certain cards and they like guess which cards you pick.
Totally.
How do they do that?
Yeah.
How did they pick, or is it just a formula?
I think you were talking about the world's greatest magic specials.
Yeah, something like that.
Those were awesome.
I used to watch those all the time, and they would say, okay, pick a card, put your finger on the TV, and they would always know which card. How do they know?
Well, what's really difficult is doing magic on camera, right? Translating magic through a camera is very difficult. And when you watch magic on TV, you're like, well, I wasn't there. I don't know. It could
be a TV trick, right?
Right. It could be a TV trick.
They could have edited it.
It's like, I've seen movies, right? You know, they can do anything with CG. So I think that's a huge barrier to like be able to get through. But yeah, that sort of like interactive stuff that you can break that wall from viewing it on a TV screen, and the magician being able to do that. I think those types of tricks work really well. So, is
it just a formula? Like they just know? You're not going to tell? Magic. You're not going to reveal?
It's magic, Rosie.
You just told me you were a skeptic, and there's no such thing. Okay,
there is no Santa Claus. No,
he's not going to reveal it. I'll have to Google it. Also, a couple other questions. So, I've heard that there's this magic kind of revolution going on in China. Are you aware of this? Are you any part of this? Do you know?
What do you mean, like revolution?
Like people in China are going crazy over magic, and magic is like just blowing up and exploding over there.
Well, I think for a number of years, I think just sort of their censorship of like internet and YouTube and things like that has kind of limited magicians from learning and be able to share, and magicians in China, being able to see a lot of stuff that's happening in magic all over the world. So I think over, in the last like few years, like, China's been more open with their internet, and I think magicians have really been flourishing there. It's awesome. I do shows in Macau, which is not really mainland China, but it's like a little island near Hong Kong. And I've been out there twice now, and it's huge.
They go crazy,
it's
right?
Like going, yeah, it's like
you're a superstar.
It's like a big thing out there, It's kind of cool.
It is. And last time I went to the Magic Castle, like half of the comedians I saw there were of Asian descent.
Yeah,
I was like so surprised.
Was it Asian Magic Week?
It wasn't.
Oh, it was just Asians are just taking over the world, Rosie. No, I think. Well, I would say I've been around Asia a lot, and I would say the best magicians I've seen have been Korea.
Really?
Yeah. South Korea.
Competition.
I don't know what it is, but some of the best magicians are coming out of South Korea, and they practice like crazy, and they practice, and when they're done practicing,
it's all the tiger moms.
More. Seriously, and it is amazing, the kind of like skill, the technical skill that they can do is unreal. But yeah, I think all over Asia, like magic is really like booming. It's becoming like a really fun, cool, new like fun thing to do and stuff. So
speaking of the Magic Castle, I think you mentioned it a little bit in the middle of the interview, and I mentioned it. And for those listeners who aren't in the LA area, what is that?
Yeah, so the Magic Castle has been around since the 50s. It's an old Victorian mansion in the Hollywood Hills, off of Franklin and Highland Avenue in Hollywood. And it's basically an old Victorian mansion that, people used to live there. And these two brothers, Milt and Bill Larson, took it over in the 50s, and they're like, let's create a magic club. And at first it was just, one room, like the main part of the house. And it was like a bar and like a little room for magicians to do card tricks. And then it slowly like expanded to all these different rooms over the years. And now it's this multi-million-dollar a year establishment where there's like a fine dining restaurant. There's 6 or 7 bars.
So it's a magic club.
It's a magic club, and it's closed to members, but members can invite guests. So it kind of has that sort of prestige, like in the in LA of, oh, how can I get in? Can you get me into the Magic Castle? You're a member. Can you invite me? So it kind of keeps that kind of cool vibe to it.
Do you have to be a magician to be a member?
So there's, over the years, it's gotten very political over the last like 10 years. But now there's like 2 types of memberships. There's like magician membership, and then there's associate membership. Don't ask me why. I think it would be much cooler if it was just magician membership. So I had to audition as a magician member.
To become a member.
To become a member. So I remember I was 15. I was coming up from San Diego on the train, staying with my cousin in the Hollywood Hills. She was living up here, and then I went and I auditioned. I was like performing on a stage that all the great magicians like had performed. I was so scared, but I got in at 15. I was part of the junior membership group, and but yeah, I it's really cool. It's like people have to dress up, so it's like suit and ties for guys, cocktail dresses for ladies. It's like a very classy place. There's no pictures allowed inside, and it attracts a lot of celebrities and a lot of people who can go to a safe place to hang out for the night.
Are there other magic clubs around the U.S., like secret magic clubs?
Not really.
Really? It's the only one?
There is only place comparable is a place in London called the Magic Circle, and it's been around for about 100 years.
I feel like London sounds very magical, and
Yeah.
Magic Circle sounds magical. Have you been there?
I have, yeah. I went my first time out there a couple years ago. Was really cool. I got to check it out. Magic Castle is more fun. Like Magic Circle is more like just magicians. You go there to learn.
Is it intense?
Yeah, it's intense. It's like a bunch of, you know, it's not really like there's not like a fun aspect. There's no real like performances. It's like we study our craft. And the Magic Castle is like, let's get drunk, let's go to the Magic Castle and watch shows and eat really overpriced food. And yeah, so I don't know. It's two different worlds. But the Magic Castle's fun. I think every week it changes. There's new performers. So
when are you back? When are you back at the Magic Castle?
I don't know. I was just there. I'm there maybe 3 or 4 weeks out of the year. So each contract's about a week long. So I'll be back soon.
That's not enough.
But it's fun, you know. It kind of keeps it special when I'm there, and yeah, it's great. I'll let you know for sure next time.
So you talked about your 10-year wait or whatever for your website.
Oh yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
So what is the website so people can go look at it?
Oh wow. Okay. Well, geez, no. Well, it's just a WordPress site. I just threw it together. It's probably really crappy comparable to.
Okay, now you're getting into your negative conversations.
Oh gosh, yes, positivity. JoelWard.com.
Okay, guys, and all of your upcoming shows are on there.
Yeah. So I need to be better about posting that on the tour page, but right now, yeah.
Okay, so I'm putting pressure on you. All listeners are people do click. I get a lot of click-throughs from the podcast. So if they click on there and there's no up-to-date shows...
Yeah, I'll go home and I'll do it right away. Yeah, there's like a lot of summer shows that I need to post for like ticket links and stuff. But yeah, it's so funny. Like after reading Chris Hardwick's book, there was a whole segment on time management. And he talks about Gmail and how great the Gmail interface is. And I use like my Apple Mail, and it's like Joel@JoelWard.com. It's like everything forwards into there, and I get all this like junk mail and all these newsletters. And it's like for me, this overwhelming like sense of like this big thing that's sitting over me is I have to figure out how to import everything into Gmail, because supposedly Gmail has all these great like apps, like, you know, and all these cool things that you can do. So I don't know. That's like my new website, the task to do. Yeah.
We'll see if it's done next time.
Yeah.
And what are some of your goals? You talked about, you know, your goals and moving forward. Let's put some big ones out there into the universe so that people can hold you accountable.
Totally. I love that. Yeah, I think, well, you know, like magic is for me, it's about the live show, right? It's all about the live show, because magic is best performed live.
And up close, in your face.
And up close, in your face. Like, so...
with some jokes.
But, you know, of course you need sort of like marketing to drive a live show. So in this day and age, a TV show is inevitable for any sort of live ticket sales. So I'm working on a TV show concept, which is kind of fun. So for years, you know, I would do these Hollywood like pitch ideas and meet with people, and gosh, that is just terrible. Relying on other people to like. So I'm just gonna self-produce and test the waters on a YouTube channel. So that's my goal.
Okay,
I'm gonna
that's
throw
really
it out
cool.
there, and
I'm
gonna start this summer, and I'm gonna film all of these 5-minute episodes and just throw them out there and give them to the universe and see if people like the concept. And so that's what I'm going to do.
All right, guys, well, go on joelward.com and check him out. Come to some of his live shows and also check out his YouTube channel. Hopefully he'll have his shows out in this summer and you guys can check it out and like him and try to leave positive comments. Don't be negative, guys. Joel, what else is going on for you before we wrap up?
Right now I'm touring with colleges, having a great time performing for the kids. Just doing this. It's so much fun. Like,
are you bringing all your stuff? Is it cumbersome? Like you have?
It is. Yeah.
It is? You have a big truck. You almost ran me over.
No, it's kind of a smaller. I'm figuring out the more travel friendly show, but I still like. I'm not like I'm not just phoning it in with like, oh, I'll just carry on a show. I'm checking 3 bags and I'm bringing a really fun show, I think.
Oh, do you ever get stopped at checking stuff in? Have you ever got stopped?
Oh my gosh, TSA?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Hey, I'm a magician.
Yeah, well, I've over the years, I mean, every single time I check bags, I always get that little slip like TSA has gone through your bags.
Well, yeah, you have knives that are cutting off fingers and arms.
All kinds of weird like props and stuff. But a lot of the TSA guys at major airports now know me.
Okay.
LAX, Chicago, Indianapolis. They're all like, "Oh, the magician." Okay. But I always travel with my birds. And that's always fun. The birds.
Do you bring them on the flight?
I bring them on the flight. Yeah. So pre 9/11, it was really hard to travel with birds. Like the airlines and TSA worked together. So you would approach TSA and then be like, okay, well, where's the ticket for the birds? And you'd have to buy a separate ticket for the birds.
Really?
And sometimes they'd want to put the birds like down with the bags, but the climate control it's so I always want to keep the birds with me on the plane, like right underneath, like stick them right underneath my seat, so I know they're safe and they're taken care of. I can give them water, give them some attention.
Oh, PETA, listen to this. He loves the birds.
So I love the birds. So after 9/11, TSA and the airlines split. So TSA and they don't know any of the regulations for the airlines. So I don't tell anybody on the airline side, and TSA are the only people who know about the birds. So TSA has this thing called hand check. So every time I get to like TSA, I'll get right up to line. I'll be like, hand check. And TSA guy will be like, hand check, hand check, hand check, hand check. And then like all these TSA people will come over and be like, what's the hand check? I'll be like, birds. I'm a magician. They're like, oh, cool, you're a magician. They're like, okay, we'll get you a screening room. So they like take the birds.
What is hand check?
Through the metal detector. And I guess it's like things that instead of like going into like that machine or going through the metal detector, they will take the birds into a screening room
and like check
and make
them.
sure they're not explosives, basically. So, so it's kind of fun. Like, so it's like I can seriously, as a magician, I could probably smuggle anything through. Like, I'm probably the worst person to be flying ever if I wanted to go down that road, but I'm not. So, but yeah, traveling with birds is very interesting on airplanes.
Okay, guys, don't trust magicians on the airplane. And ladies, watch out. All right, watch out. Magicians are dangerous. Guys, this has been Out of the Box podcast with Rosie Tran. Out of the Box is sponsored by hugmetees.com. Spread love, give a hug, hugmetees.com. Guys, go on Hug Me Tees. Get a Hug Me Tee. I swear to you, you will get 100 hugs that day just wearing it. People will come up to you, read your shirt, and give you a big hug. It's very, very nice. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. If you enjoyed the podcast, go on itunes.com/outoftheboxpodcast and leave a positive review. If you hated the podcast and you think that we are annoying and awful, go on itunes.com/outoftheboxpodcast and leave a negative review. I don't care. Just leave a review because reviews make the numbers go up. That's all I care about. You guys are awesome. Check me out on Twitter @FunnyRosie. This has been Out of the Box podcast with Rosie Tran.